If you've ever had an idea and you put it off and you just kept thinking about it and wondering if you should do it, well, it is time to stop waiting, and our guest today is going to tell you why. Hi, it's Melanie Benson here, and I'm America's leading small business optimizer. And this weekly podcast is all about you hearing from experts and people who've been there and done that, how to make your business perform 10, 50, even 100 times better with little tiny small tweaks in your thinking, your habits, and the way that you put strategies into place. So let me introduce to you a very, very cool guest today. I have to say, he's one of my favorite people on this planet and a friend of mine for a very, very long time. And we're actually in a mastermind group together. And it's always fun when I get to bring on my special friends like this. This is Jim Palmer. Jim Palmer is a marketing expert, host of the hit weekly web TV show watched by thousands called Newsletter Guru TV. And he's also the author of the new hit book, Stop Waiting for It to Get Easier, Create Your Dream Business Now, and the host of an upcoming live event, the Stop Waiting Academy. So, hey Jim, welcome. I want to give you a big round of applause, getting Stop Waiting out there in the world.
Thunderous roar.
Yes, because I'm also clapping right next to the mic. So, we've known each other a really, really long time, and we have so many different places that we've played together. Jim and I actually created a program together many years ago called the Magnetic Attraction and Retention System. Look at that, it's right there.
Oh my God, right.
Hey, wait a minute. There was a book covering it up. What's up with
I
that?
should have had that ready to go. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, because there was no staging going on behind you, right?
Yes. Ignore this.
Exactly. So, today I thought it'd be really fun to talk about your new venture and then kind of pull behind the scenes a little bit about why this has been important for you. But you've recently put out the Stop Waiting Academy, which is a live event that you're inviting people to, and a book that went with it. But, why? Why do you need to do Stop Waiting? What's the big deal about Stop Waiting, and why is this so important to get out there in the world?
As I shared with you, because behind the scenes and we're talking all the time, but last April, there was literally about a 3 to 5 day period, Melanie, where, I'm doing coaching calls 3 days a week, and then I'm doing interviews like this. And so coaching members would have asked me in a number of, well, I'm thinking of launching a new program. I'm thinking of writing a book. I'm thinking of doing this. What's a good time? Should I wait for the economy? Should I be, all these things. I'm always, stop waiting. Go do it now. Stop waiting. Stop waiting. There's no better time. Do it now. Some variation of that. And then in an interview, somebody asked me, it's tough out there. What do you think? Should people just kind of hunker down? I said, no, they just need to stop waiting for it to get easier. And you know me, when I write something down, when I say something or hear something, I thought, that's a great book title. And literally about a week after that, I committed, and I even said publicly on social media, I'm starting to write my fifth book, and it'll be done by October 1st. So it's kind of part of getting things done, right? Making a public declaration. And so I started doing a little research. I've studied business since, the late 70s. And what I know to be true, Melanie, is that if you look at the millionaires, billionaires, major brands that we're all familiar with today, most of them started during recessionary or even during the Depression, all the way through to current day. All the way up to the 50s after the Korean War, and then in the 70s when they had the Iran oil embargo and prices were going up. I remember gas lines at that time, and that's when Fred Smith started Federal Express, by the way. He was sending jet planes across the country with 3 packages. He didn't wait for it to get easier. He launched and he kept going. And so, the bottom line is there is no perfect time to launch a business or to grow a business. True story, I was finished with the book, and I was just doing something on social media, or maybe I was writing something, and I saw this quote. An old Chinese proverb said, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, the second best time is today. And I said, that could have been one page between the cover, and that's really the whole book. But that was kind of the message of the book, is that too many people sit back waiting for everything to fall into place and be perfect, and time is just flying by.
Yeah, it's such a powerful message because, I have that place in me where sometimes I wait for things to get right, but I'm also the person where I can really take action. How do you know when you need to take action from your point of view?
Part of it, I think, comes from my experience, 12, almost 13 years ago now. When I started my business, I had just come off 15 months unemployment. We had no money, already heavily in debt, just keeping the family afloat. I faced cancer, as you know, and So if there was not a good time to start a business, that probably would have been it. But I started, and thankfully I did because, things have worked out pretty well. But as far as how do you know, I mean, it's not to say you don't do research, because you do. You don't want to go charging headlong creating this program or this new business without at least finding out if there's a need for it.
Hmm.
Is there an audience for this? But once you do find out there's a need, what I'm saying is don't wait for everything to be perfect. Launch and keep changing and innovating, adapting, and success goes like this. It's not a straight shot. And every time you wait for something to line up, something else goes askew, right? So it's always this thing, but it's always about being in action. I mean, there's so many things I've done, as you know, that haven't worked out, but they've all been incredible learning lessons.
And do you think sometimes you might be moving forward on something that doesn't ultimately pan out, but it actually opens doors and or gives you insight or training, or there's something that happens in that process that actually opens the right door?
Absolutely. When you're in action and moving toward a goal, your mind moves from. I talked to somebody just a little while ago about change your, and you'd appreciate this with the whole money DNA thing, but don't say I can't afford this. Say, what do I got to do to make this happen,
Hmm.
right? And so when somebody's in action, even if it's not on a financial thing, they're looking for ways to make it happen. And when you're open your mind like that, you're going to meet people. There'll be things that are out there right now, but it's only because you're in a proactive growth mode that those things even come into your peripheral vision, and you can grab them or not grab them, or make them happen, and again change. But when you're in this hunker down mode waiting to push the button, it's kind of like you've got the protective dome over your head in case an avalanche comes down or something. A little thing people have this time of year. So it really is a lot about mindset. And one of the main things, Melanie, I think, is people, when they feed their mind trash, whether it be the news or the economy or just all kinds of crap that you see on TV, that really feeds your mindset. And so when you focus every day on, first of all, having an attitude, what am I grateful for? But this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to go do it. I mean, it's such your mind is so incredible. So when you're having a great mindset is certainly a big part of it.
So why, like, what do you think is the biggest cost if somebody waits too long? Because obviously for some people they might make up in their head that waiting is actually good for them. There's the well, I'm going to wait till I have money, or I'm going to wait till I'm more successful, or I'm going to wait till I have more clients, or I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait. And we can rationalize and justify waiting for things till the cows come home. But why is that maybe not an effective way to go about things?
Because every time you wait, things change. So, for instance, if you said, okay, today I'm going to wait for this and this to kind of get a little closer, this will come to fruition, this might change. But then three things over here change. If you think about it, what if somebody waited? That's not a good word. Let me go a different way. Um, think of all the opportunities we have. As like I would talk about $1 million platform. That's how you really grow a business, by being everywhere, being seen wherever people are. So whether they're on Pinterest or Facebook or Twitter or in video, if they're listening to podcasts, if they're reading books, all these different places is where you need to be to effectively be seen. But what if you waited? I mean, what if somebody said, well, I'm just not happy with Twitter. I'm going to wait for Facebook to develop, or I'm going to wait for LinkedIn to finally open up and let groups, I mean, it's too many things happen, too many things change. And one of the great things about starting a business now, if we want to label this as kind of a crappy economy, interest rates are really low if you have to borrow money. I mean, there's so much available talent out there if you need to hire anybody. There's tons of people that are out of work that have skills. I mean, technology has never made it easier, and there's no reason to wait. Stop waiting.
Stop waiting. Well, I was thinking about, I was actually watching Oprah's Super Soul Sunday this morning, and she was interviewing, it was an older interview, but she was interviewing Howard Schultz on the book Onward,
Yeah.
who, if you don't know who Howard Schultz is, if you're listening in, the CEO of Starbucks. And what a lot of people don't know is actually Starbucks, he didn't found Starbucks. It was that he was an employee of Starbucks, and Starbucks originated as a coffee, like a place where you could buy coffee beans. They didn't
Right.
serve coffee. And so when he originally had the idea, he wasn't ready to buy a business and start it, but he knew that he had to do it. Like he was compelled to move it forward. And he trusted that part of him, that passion he had. And he said his passion was never about profit. His passion was about creating a sense of community. His vision was he wanted to be the place between work and home that people gathered and
Right.
connected.
And he was over, was it Italy, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And going to all these, I don't know if they call them bistros or coffee bars or whatever. And he says, we need this in the States. Now, Melanie, I read another book of his, and he came back and brought this idea to Starbucks. They wanted no part of it.
Right. They
We
said,
sell
nope,
coffee
isn't going to
beans.
work.
Here, this just popped into my head. A lot of people ask me the difference between an entrepreneur and a small business owner, and that's it.
Hmm.
Starbucks at that time was a small business that wanted to sell more and more coffee beans. He was an entrepreneur and said, this is a great way to sell more coffee beans,
Right.
and everything else. And they didn't want any parts of it. And that's why they eventually separated.
Yeah, and I don't, and just so everybody understands too, Starbucks actually came back to Howard Schultz later to and sold him the business, and he wasn't ready for that either. But if he had
Mm-hmm.
waited, could you imagine what it would be like today? And I just as a kind of an analogy, I see so many people who put the brakes on and then get mad or upset because someone else had a similar idea and they got it out there in the world, and so they ended up with the market share, they ended up with the trajectory. I used to work for Motorola, and we had something like that happen way back in the day before smartphones. This was when the big deal was digital.
Yep.
And they waited on getting the smaller phone out, and they lost so much market share because the competitor went for it. And I just can think of so many examples of waiting being the thing that can be your demise, and can actually, derail you if it's something that's totally congruent and aligned with what you want to get out there in the world.
Other than, I'll probably get myself in trouble, but other than being a teenager and saying, wait before you start having kids, right? I mean, there's not too many things in life where it doesn't make sense not to wait. Oh, let's just stay with business where I really stick my foot in my mouth. But you know what I mean? In business, and by the way, Howard Schultz, when he had that opportunity, he borrowed money from every relative and friend he could. He was in hockey, he was broke, but he went for it.
Hmm.
He really had that vision, and went ahead and charged for it. And it really is a great example of stop waiting for it to get easier, because it really never does get easier.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, it might just be really kind of strengthening their ability to have confidence and be an action taker. So maybe we can like play around with like what are two or three characteristics or maybe even techniques. If you're nervous and you're afraid and you've got an idea and you want to get out there, but you're holding back, like what are a couple of things that somebody might be able to do to activate the confidence to move forward?
Um, I said earlier, you want to make sure an attractive crowd that wants to have what you have. So how do you do that? Let's tackle that. The first thing you can do is you can go to Google and type it in. So whatever it is that you, as the person who knows what it is. So let's say something obscure. Three ring binders sitting down here, right? So you say, I'm going to create three ring binders for some reason. So type in three ring binders for presentations, and you Google that, because that's what you want to create. I want to create these binders that everybody can use to when they're salesmen or whatever it is. So you Google three ring binders for presentations and see what comes up. In the upper left hand corner, you're going to see how many people search for that within the last month or so. And if that's a big number, that should be very cool. If it's a huge number, you're likely to see a lot of people that offer that service below, Melanie, in the organic search. If it's not a huge number, whatever that means to you, that doesn't mean it's not a good thing. It means nobody's really doing that, and you could still make a nice living out of a small niche. The next thing to do is go to Amazon and type in the same thing. See if anybody's written a book about it. If there are a number of books, start reading the reviews, because the people and by the way, here's a tip: you want to not read the 1 star or the 5 star reviews, because they're usually skewed one way or the other. Read the ones that may be 2, 3, or 4 stars, because those people probably are not friends of the author. They
Right.
actually read the book and posted a comment, and you'll see this really addressed a need of mine. I always had a hard time finding a binder for a presentation. This told me exactly what I needed to do. You said, well, that's pretty cool. And so you read those, and it's just like people searching for information on Craigslist and things like that. So just do a little research for free, usually on your laptop, and you're going to find out. So if there is a need, then you need to find out, what am I going to do to create this enormous value so people recognize it as value? What's going to be my my secret sauce, so to speak. What is going to cause people to want to find me? So there's a couple things you can do because a lot of people say, I don't know if there's a need for this. Those are two ways you can find out if there's a need.
So do the research and, start to gain facts and data to support the idea. And, if the facts and data are there, then you can gain the confidence to move forward.
The other thing you can do, if I can say one more
Yeah.
thing, and this is almost always putting the cart before the horse, so I get that. Invest in a coach or join a mastermind, or at least go with find where other entrepreneurs are, even if it's at the Chamber of Commerce, and just run your idea by a few people, and just to see. Don't run it by your spouse or your parents or your neighbor, because if they're not of the entrepreneurial mindset, they're going to say it's not a good time to start a business. Nobody needs that. You're going to get a lot of go to people who are used to making decisions, creative people, and people who are used to taking risks, and see what they say.
Yeah, our family and close friends are usually going to hold us back more than they're going to help light the fire because
Exactly.
they want us to be protected and they want us to be safe, and most people don't want to rock the boat. What I was going to say too is for me, one of the ways that stop waiting really, kind of comes up for me is thinking about when I wanted to start my own business. And, a lot of people wait and wait and wait because it's the right time. I need to have a certain amount of money and all that. And so I was actually telling someone else in another interview this morning that I stopped waiting by setting a goal and getting really clear what I had to do in order to feel confident with making the leap and leaving behind my cushy day job.
Hmm.
And so sometimes I think it's just being so clear that the pain of staying where you are is greater than the possibility and what you need to do to get the new thing done. And I think a lot of people wait because they're too comfortable where they are, and
Yeah.
the promise is not as great as the pain they're perceiving they'll have to have. So
Yeah.
if someone sees it's going to be really hard, like what's something that they could do to move through that resistance that they're having besides the logical go check it out?
Well, first of all, take one step and do something that's going to be in action toward this goal. But before I want to complete that thought, Melanie, when people feel that consternation and gnashing of the teeth or biting the nails or something like that, that's something to pay attention to. I don't think I've ever met an entrepreneur who's really gone through it and come out, successful, whatever that means, and said, and they haven't said something like this. If I knew how hard it was going to be, I
Mm-hmm.
never would have got started. It is, it's I forget who said it, but it's not beanbag. Somebody on Shark Tank said that. It's not beanbag, right? This is high intense business. There's risk, there's uncertainty, there's days and weeks when you pay other people and you can't pay yourself. I mean, it is tough growing a
It
small
can be, yeah.
business. It can be. It can also be incredibly rewarding, but I'm saying you have to judge if you have the temerity to get going. So pay attention to that, because if you can't pull the trigger and do at least one thing, so let's talk about what the one thing would be. Um, so you could do research, but maybe what you can do, here's a thing. Instead of taking a week or a month to design your logo and your business card, go knock on a few doors. Go call on some businesses. Just go right down to the local business park and say, you know, I represent Jim Palmer's unique 3D presentation binders, and these are awesome for salespeople. How many salespeople do you have here? And go on a few sales calls. If that scares the heck out of you, which it will, you go do five more. And if you don't think you can ever get over that, that's probably a reason not to start. And I know we're trying to be inspirational here, but these are things you can do. On the other hand, you go and say, well, those are pretty interesting. You should go talk to so and so. You go, that's pretty cool. And see, what I think is people sometimes, Melanie, try to bite off more than they
Right.
can chew at the
It's too
time.
big.
It's too big. And somebody will say, Jim, I've got a $5,000 program. I can't get anybody to buy it. I said, break it up into, come up with a $500 item, or heaven forbid, a $197 item that they can try with low risk. And if they like it, get a little success, and they feel comfortable with you, they're going to look for, okay, what's next? What's the next way that you can help me? So there's a lot of things but what it all boils down to is small steps equal little successes, and that gives you a little bit of, fortitude and inner fortitude and
Yeah, so it's almost
courage.
like start making the snowball by rolling it, and then once it starts to pick up some traction, it'll start getting momentum on its own. And just by being willing to take some steps and start to build up the confidence, and I think for a lot of us, we have to build up the muscle of being a risk taker. We have to build up the strength and the character of being someone who is going to take that next leap. And I love that you're saying, like, I always say chunk it down, like get
Yeah.
a little smaller step to take, and then let that start to gain momentum. Because sometimes that's all you need is just to start build some mini wins.
A big one for me is when I write a book. When I'm at ground zero, like nothing written, it's like, oh, I know I got to get started, right? And it just seems like this. Wait, is that the mailman? I'm going to go check the mailbox. And I'll do everything to avoid sitting down at a blank piece of paper. And maybe on a smaller scale is like if I have to give a new presentation that requires a new PowerPoint, it's going to take 3 hours at least to put together something. But once you get started and kind of like that, and then you get rolling, now starts, then you get energized, right? And you keep going. When I write, what I usually do is I'll write the end and then I'll write the beginning. So I'm addressing this is what the book is. Now I go, this feels good. And I'll try and write like maybe just the table of contents. And that looks pretty good. And it's a little thing. It really is that first step is the most important one in whatever you're going to tackle.
In all the years I've known you, I did not know your book writing strategy.
Yes.
Okay, I've taken notes because you have five and I have zero that I've written on my own. Although I have created a lot of product.
Yes. But the cool thing about writing the end, and I will tell you that the end usually gets rewritten. But what I will sometimes do, and it's not too different in this latest book, for instance, I changed it because I actually wrote the end when I was on vacation. We rented that lake house, you remember. So I changed it a little bit. But I wrote it and basically said, this is now this is what thing, you should have a comfort level. And so I wrote what I wanted everybody to feel after they wrote this book that was in my head.
Mm.
And that helps kind of really chunk down what it is that you now have to deliver. But if you start at the beginning and you start writing without a clear strategy of where you're going, it really seems like this ginormous task.
I love the whole thing about getting out of procrastination and being in action, and you just sharing some of your own techniques is really helpful. I'm wondering if we could like maybe just kind of pull back the curtains a little bit and get to know Jim Palmer, the newsletter guru, the man with capes and superhero powers.
Yes, you saw that
I
back,
did
no?
in action. What would you say overall was one of your greatest challenges that you think maybe people might get some value learning from someone who's been in business for a while?
Well, you kind of know my pre-business challenge. I mean, that was the greatest challenge I faced in my life. But I think the greatest challenge I had in business was the first year. Um, it was 11 and a half months of being revenue free, as I call it, which is a play way of saying I sucked at getting my first customer, right? And but I was tenacious, man. I went out there and I did it. I ended up getting a part-time job and working like a super early morning shift and then coming home by noon and then getting into sales mode and making calls, phone calls, knocking on doors, going out to networking events at night. I did what I refer to as I planted seed. But if you think about it, month three, month four, month five, nothing. Mother-in-law at month six, hey, here's an article. They're looking for a director of marketing. Maybe you should do that. I have my own business. Oh, really? There's stuff like that going on. And I'm going and going, and there's mortgage, credit card, and all that. And, I knew I was going to be successful, but I didn't know when.
Mm.
And I was not going to give up. And one of the things, and this was actually before I read the book 3 Feet from Gold, which is a great book, I knew that the more it went, the closer I was getting to my first customer. And I thought, as hard as it is, if I quit now, shame on me. Do you know what I mean? And I also felt, just based on my own head and my faith, I felt I'm really being tested here. How badly do I want it? Because nothing's going to be easy. If I'm going to have a very nice business, you're going to have to go through a little fire, right?
Hmm.
So I think that whole first year tested me beyond anything because in the years going forward, by the way, right before the anniversary of like my first year, I did get my first client. It was a pretty good sized chamber of commerce. And then I had two, three, four. It really started succeeding, which is another testament to keep planting seeds. But once I got that, I mean, I still went through 3 or 4 years of really hard financially because I had so much debt and just trying to pay things down. But I just kept looking for the prize, and the prize was becoming financially independent and stable and providing for the home and retirement for Stephanie and I and all that. And that's what I kept chasing. And there were hundreds, Melanie, of gut check time, am I really able to do this? And every time I had that gut check moment, I knew I could do it and I wasn't going to give up. And I think that is, I guess we call that perseverance, but that's one of the most important character traits of a successful entrepreneur is perseverance.
Yeah, I would agree with you because, my own business has not necessarily been a picnic the whole time. And I think you got to want it more than the problems that come up. You've got to have, like you said, you've got to have that burning why. You've got to have that thing that just lights you up and makes you want to come back over and over and over again. And, you've got to fall in love with what it is that you want to get out there in the world, and it's got to be the driver. And I think, getting that there will be ups and downs, and that's normal, can maybe help you feel a little bit more normal when they happen. I also think like knowing like how to turn up the notch and make your business more powerful can be, really important. And the whole theme of this is optimizing. What is it that makes your business work in a more optimum fashion? I'm
I'm
wondering
glad
if
you,
like,
I'm glad you said that. I have something to share. Do you want me to do it or do you
well,
want
I
to?
was gonna say, like, what is something that you learned along the way, and maybe it was the game changer, or maybe it's just the thing that you realized was like what turned the fire up and allowed you to become more and more successful.
It was finally, and I would say, pardon my French, I kicked my own ass when I kept bumping up against, um, you know, I was doing multiple six figures, but I had reached this point I couldn't get past it. And I kept reading about writing a book, being an
Mm.
author. I kept reading about public speaking, which I was petrified to do. I mean, I avoided that most of my life, got away with it somehow. But the thought of getting up in front of a group of people really terrified me. But I knew everything I kept reading about all these different things you need to do, they were all, don't you know, outside the comfort zone. And I thought, shame on me for not doing this. And
Mm.
I mean, I just plugged away at it. And, I actually joined this small group. I had like 30 people. We had monthly meetings, and I got up in front of 30 people and got really comfortable, and it got bigger and bigger. I've been in front of hundreds of people now, and it doesn't really bother me, but you have to start somewhere. And I wrote my first book. It took me a year and a half. You got to be willing to do, if you want to have extraordinary success, you have to do extraordinary things. What I tell people is, if you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, you know what you need to do to get two or three new customers this month or this quarter, whatever it is. Go make a few calls, work your database, your current clients, get some referrals. Anybody can do that, right? But what if you want to have 30 or 300 new clients this year? What does that look like? Well, that means you can't just be one-to-one marketing anymore. You need to be one-to-many. That means doing video interviews. That means doing videos, getting out and speaking. All these different things that are outside your comfort zone. It really is something that takes your business to the next level. But it does separate the men from the boys, the women from the girls. Those people who are willing to do that, not just be sitting in the seat looking at the speaker up on stage, those people willing to put themselves up there, those are usually the people who are going to achieve some high level of success.
Yeah, I think it separates the people who struggle and complain from those that thrive and enjoy success. What are you willing to
Absolutely.
do, even if it's uncomfortable? What are you willing to do to really like, make it work?
What's an eye-opening experience along those lines? How many seminars have I been to? Tons, right? And I would see these speakers up there, and I go, just because I know speaking and stuff like that, I go, God, they're horrible. And I think to myself, if they can do it, doggone it, I can do that probably even better. So get out there, go to live events, and see what goes on. Study people who speak, and you'll be surprised at how well some people do, even when they're not that good at it.
And I'd even say this is a really good reason to hire a coach too. Is if there's a skill that you want to develop, don't shy away from hiring someone and or investing in a training that specializes in that piece that you need to get good at. I mean, that's certainly how I've mastered each and every step of my business. Is I invested in training, I invested in mentors, I invested in groups, masterminds, whatever it took to be able to shorten the gap between the skill set that I needed and the one that I had.
Absolutely. Every successful entrepreneur you can look at, the one thing they had in common is they usually have coaches and they're usually in masterminds. Those two things,
Yep.
without a doubt.
Yep, I would agree, and I've had both for many, 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 many years. So Jim, what's a favorite mantra or quote that you like to kind of keep you high in your inspiration and focus?
A mantra or quote. Um, well, two come to mind. I don't know if they're quotes or, well, one's a quote. Um, I forget who said it. I know Ronald Reagan used to have it on his desk. It's amazing what you can accomplish when it doesn't matter who gets the credit, right? So I'm
Mm.
about building my business. I'm about helping others and giving back. But I have a lot of people on my team. I don't care who gets the quote. We're building this business, right? It's not about you. It's not even about me per se. It's about what we're able to do. So, release, let go of your ego, let go of your desire to do everything yourself, Mr. and Mrs. Entrepreneur, right? And create something really good by being able to get help and let other people help you. Um, but the other thing I think, I don't know if this is a mantra so much as a strategy. Um, you as an entrepreneur will earn significantly more money for who you are than what you do. So it doesn't matter if you're an accountant or a coach or, a dry cleaner, it doesn't matter. When you can create positioning for yourself, become a celebrity expert, whether it's through videos or podcasts or books or speaking, you will draw clients to you instead of having to go out there constantly putting your hook in the water.
So true. I love that.
Was either one of those a mantra?
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
I would say the second one's probably more of a mantra. And
Okay.
you have a lot of them. I don't know if you realize it, but there's been some great ones that I've learned from you over the years, and one of them is like, really, the customer service mindset, and really understanding the value of a customer to your business, and the way you see the world has always been a really great teacher for me when I don't know what to do with
And
customer
that's
service.
when we created Mars, Melanie. And
Hmm.
I think where we originally started, where we ended up, was almost two places, but it was so powerful. And speaking of Mars, um, so here's another quote for you based on the customer service piece. So that's really what drives me a lot is um, Sam Walton said, "A customer can fire everybody from the CEO all the way down to the floor sweeper simply by deciding to spend their money somewhere else." And so what I trained for many years in retail is when the customer starts saying, "Can I?" meaning here's the product, and they're going to ask, "Can I get this different or change it or how can I?" Train your brain to immediately start figuring out how can I deliver that and say, "No, this is how we do it. This is how we offer it. No, this is how it comes. It comes this way." And when you can please your customers so much that they become raving fans and they tell other people about your business, man, your profits go up like crazy.
Yep.
Far too many people think this is my program. You're going to be happy with it. I'd love it if you buy it, but this is my program. No, it's all up to them. They can go spend their money somewhere else.
So true. So real quick, you have something coming up that's exciting,
Yeah,
and you want to tell us a little bit about, what's going to be happening for you in the next couple months?
absolutely. And I credit you with being one of my major inspirations for doing this. I'm putting on my own live event. It's called Stop Waiting Academy. So it's kind of based on the book, and people ask me all the time, I want to have a business kind of like yours. You got multiple streams of revenue, you got the coaching, multiple programs, and how do you do that? How do you advertise all these different places? How do you get so much done and all this and that? So I want to call it a little bit of a workshop, but it's more of me. I'm going to be teaching for 2 days straight. This is not a 1 hour after the other speaker getting up there and selling you something. This is literally me doing 95% of the teaching. One of the main things I'm going to teach you is how to build what I call $1 million platform on a shoestring budget. So how to do tons of very, very cool creative advertising, be seen everywhere without, being tied to your desk or tied to your checkbook. And it's going to be a really cool event. It's March 13th, 14th, and 15th in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hmm.
And appreciate you letting me mention that. It's going to be a very, very cool event. And we have like 20 seats. As we're recording this, we have about 20 to 22 seats left, I think. So it's pretty fun.
Very cool. So, where can people check out the event, and how can people find you online?
StopWaitingAcademy.com, www.stopwaitingacademy.com will take you right there. And my main page is thenewsletterguru.com, and from there you can access the TV show, the podcast, the books, all the programs, blog, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and
I'll bring
I
along
highly
for you.
recommend you go check out Jim. He's got a fun podcast. I've been a guest a couple of times, and
Yes, you probably more than anybody. I've been there too.
yeah, I guess that's a good sign when you keep getting us back, right?
I
And you were
know.
actually our very first guest on this series last year when I kicked this off, so it's nice to have you back.
Quite an honor.
Uh,
And it's just I appreciate your help and advice, Melanie, so much. You've been an inspiration and a coach, a great mindset coach for me. So anything I can do for you.
Aw, thanks. Well, go check out stopwaitingacademy.com
Yep.
and get the book. Hopefully, you can join Jim at the event. It's going to be a great immersion into getting whatever it is you want out there in the world that you've been holding back on, and you'll leave with some clarity on, basically a roadmap and a blueprint of how to get it out in the world. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. And go say hi to Jim. Go check out his stuff. So, and I want to thank you for being here today. We'd love to hear, like, was there a nugget, a piece of advice, maybe a little insight that really stirred you up today? If you're following along on the blog, just post it in the comments below. And if you're on iTunes, hey, give us a shout out and let us know what worked for you by going over to melaniebensonstrick.com. All right, everybody, we'll see you next week for another great guest. Bye for now.